David Nazaro. He's going to be speaking from the Speaking to Inform Manual, Project 3. And his evaluator is Chris Karlovic. Can you please give the objectives for David's speech?
Sure, Catherine. David's objectives are to prepare a demonstration speech to clearly explain a process, product, or activity, and conduct a demonstration as part of a speech delivered without notes. And I believe this is 7 to 9 minutes.
7 to 9
Yeah.
minutes, yes. Right. Can you give the timing preferences for a 7 to 9 minute speech?
Once we reach 7 minutes, I will show you the green sign. 8 minutes, we'll see the yellow sign, and 9 minutes, we'll see the red sign. 9 minutes and a half, I'll show you the stop sign.
Thank you. Well, tonight David is going to surprise us with his knowledge of crime. I'm sure it's not first-hand experience, but he's going to explain to us and describe to us the process of how a thought becomes a solicitation, that merges into conspiracy, and then finally an attempt. He calls these 3 inchoate or incomplete crimes, and they form a continuum of crime. It starts with a thought and ends with an attempt. Let's welcome David Nazaro with his speech from solicitation to attempt.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. Today I'm going to talk about the important process by which a thought becomes 3 important crimes. Before I begin, I'm going to go over the 4 basic elements of crimes. The first 2 are the most important. Now this is in legalese, and don't be intimidated by it. I'm going to explain it in plain English in a moment. But in legalese, just for your own education, we start with the actus reus. The actus reus is a voluntary act. The criminal defendant must do something. Must do something voluntarily. The mens rea, and this is important, is the state of mind. So with different crimes, there's a different state of mind that's required. We must have both the appropriate state of mind and the criminal act. These are the 2 most important things in every criminal prosecution. They must occur concurrently, which means at the same time, or set in motion. The guilty mind must set in motion the guilty hand, and the guilty hand must cause an act that results in an unlawful result, which means breaking the law. These must be proved by the government, which is the prosecution, the party that is charged with arguing against the defendant in each crime beyond reasonable doubt. This is burden of proof, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. And there must be an absence of either justification or excuse. The defendant did not have justification or excuse. So what this means in plain English. In every criminal case, we must have a criminal act, a voluntary act by the defendant. There must be a guilty mind. You can also call this the criminal mind. The defendant must have to either intend to do the guilty act, or depending on the act section and driving under the influence situation, have acted with recklessness. The guilty act must set into motion what would result in the breaking of the law, and the actual cause means that the breaking of the law actually happened, and in some cases was foreseeable. Now, the prosecution or government must prove this beyond reasonable doubt. This has never been defined by the United States Supreme Court, and never will be, because the jury, that's the people, which is you, when you get called in to serve on jury duty, you get to decide what reasonable doubt is. But the intent behind reasonable doubt is it's supposed to be very, very difficult in this country to put someone behind bars. The government must meet a burden, it must show, it must produce substantial evidence, it must convince you, the citizens, that this person in fact committed a crime. You must be convinced of it before you deprive someone of their freedom and put them in jail. There is no legal defense available to the defendant. Okay? Tonight I'm going to talk about 3 crimes. These have been called the 3 most unpopular crimes in the criminal law. They are solicitation, conspiracy, and attempt. The second requirement, the guilty mind, in each one is the defendant must act with purpose. It must be his conscious objective to accomplish each of these 3 crimes. And this forms a continuum. This is the lesser crime, the more serious, and the most serious of the 3. So to help me illustrate this, I have a cast of characters. So in each of the three crimes, our intended victim will be Jerry the Mouse, here referred to as Jerry. Defendant number 1 will be Tom, and defendant number 2 will be Batman. So Tom's a real jerk. Okay? He sits around and he thinks about hurting Jerry all the time. All he wants to do is hurt Jerry. He wants to kill Jerry. So he has the requisite intent. He has the purpose of wanting to kill Jerry. But this is not enough to put Tom behind bars, because he hasn't done anything yet. There's no act. Thoughts alone are never enough. It's very important. So now we go to the next step. Tom says it out loud. I want you to kill Jerry. But this time he's saying it to another person. The person listening here is Batman. Now, the courts don't like solicitation because thoughts are being said out loud. We don't want to punish people just for thoughts. So the real social harm in solicitation is when someone who's normally good, Batman is usually on the side of good, can be corrupted by another person. The other person's thoughts might induce, might influence, might contribute to another person acting in a way that they wouldn't act otherwise, but for this communication. The courts are very uncomfortable with this because we don't have an act yet. So the act here is the communication itself. And usually in these cases, it only really will be prosecuted if we have an undercover police officer with a wire, or there's a bug. We're absolutely certain this person actually said these things. Until there's an act, this is actually a very weak case. Because at this point, we can't really tell whether or not Jerry really intends, or whether Tom really intends to kill Jerry. We need to see something more, usually. Solicitation has been called the most unpopular crimes. Courts don't like it. Once Batman agrees, we have what's called a criminal conspiracy. A criminal conspiracy exists. This has been called the most vague of all crimes. The courts define it differently. The most simple definition, we have 2 or more people who have a specific intent to commit a crime and a specific intent to achieve that crime. Okay? So here, Tom the Cat is communicating to Batman that he wants him to kill Jerry, and Batman has agreed. Here, we still have thoughts out loud. At common law, traditionally, this was enough. This is already the crime of conspiracy. Today, in California and most states, they have to actually do something. They have to prepare to commit the crime. You don't have to do a lot. It can be very, very simple. Batman can fill his car up with gasoline. Tom can go on Google Maps and try to find where Jerry lives. Anything at all that shows that they're preparing to commit the crime, we have the crime of conspiracy, and they can both be charged. Both defendant number 1 and defendant number 2 can be charged with conspiracy to kill Jerry. This is conspiracy to commit murder. Now we have attempt. So attempt happens before the actual crime has taken place. Jerry has not been killed. The real issue for the courts is, at what point do we go beyond preparation and enter into perpetration? They're no longer, Tom and Batman are no longer preparing for the crime. They've actually begun the crime itself. So here they can be lying in wait. If Jerry never shows up, they can still be charged with attempt. If Jerry's out of town and they wait outside his house for him to come home, they can be charged with attempt. Different states require different things. In California, it's anything that would show that the perpetration of the crime has begun. We're no longer preparing for a crime, we're actually in the point of the crime itself. If they complete the crime, if they actually kill Jerry, they will no longer be charged with attempt, they'll be charged with the completed crime of murder in the first degree of Jerry the Mouse. So I hope you learned something about the 3 most popular crimes in this. Help uplift your day. Thank you.